The mining colony of Haven's Rest had been humanity's proudest achievement in the Kepler system until the Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace like metallic vultures descending upon carrion. Commander Sarah Chen watched through the reinforced windows of the command center as sleek alien warships formed a perfect blockade around the asteroid mining facility, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly blue radiance that seemed to pulse with malevolent intent. "How many ships do you count, Lieutenant Morrison?" Chen asked, her voice steady despite the growing pit of dread in her stomach. 43 confirmed hostiles, Commander, all destroyer class or larger. They've got us completely surrounded." Morrison's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his scanner display. "Long-range communications are being jammed. We can't even send a distress signal." The Zephyrians had arrived without warning, without any attempt at communication. Their reputation preceded them across the galaxy as ruthless conquerors who viewed other species as nothing more than obstacles to their expansion. Entire civilizations had vanished after encountering their fleets, leaving behind only empty worlds and scattered debris. Chen surveyed the mining facility's defensive capabilities with a growing sense of futility. Haven's Rest had been designed for industrial operations, not warfare. They possessed minimal shielding, outdated point defense systems, and a complement of only 200 personnel, most of whom were miners and engineers rather than trained soldiers. "Commander, incoming transmission from the lead Zephyrian vessel," reported Communications Officer Davis, her face pale with apprehension. The main display flickered to life, revealing a towering alien figure with scaled, reptilian features and eyes that burned like molten amber. When the Zephyrian spoke, its voice resonated with cold authority that seemed to leach warmth from the air itself. "Human settlement. You have violated sacred Zephyrian territory. Your species lacks the strength and wisdom to deserve existence among the stars. Surrender immediately, and we will grant you swift termination. Resist, and your suffering will be prolonged beyond measure." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Chen felt the weight of 200 lives pressing down upon her shoulders like a crushing burden. Every face in the room looked to her for answers she didn't possess. "What are our options, Commander?" asked Chief Engineer Rodriguez, his weathered hands clenched into white-knuckled fists. Chen studied the tactical display showing their hopeless situation. The Zephyrian ships had positioned themselves with mathematical precision, covering every possible escape route. Their weapon systems were powered and ready, capable of reducing Haven's Rest to molten slag within minutes. "We can't fight them directly," Chen admitted, her tactical training warring with her protective instincts. "Our weapons are designed for asteroid mining, not ship-to-ship combat. We might disable one of their smaller escorts, but they'd vaporize us long before we could make a dent in their main force." "So we just give up?" Morrison's voice cracked with emotion. "Let them murder everyone without a fight?" "No," Chen said firmly, her mind racing through possibilities. "We buy time. Every second we delay gives Earth more opportunity to respond to our situation. The Zephyrians might be jamming our communications, but our scheduled check-in was supposed to happen 3 hours ago. Fleet Command will notice our silence." The facility's emergency lighting cast everything in harsh red shadows as Chen gathered her senior staff around the central planning table. The mining colony's blueprints sprawled across the surface, showing kilometers of tunnels, processing chambers, and storage bays carved directly into the asteroid's rocky heart. "We're going to use the mining tunnels as a fortress," Chen explained, tracing routes through the complex with her finger. "The Zephyrians will have to come to us if they want this facility intact. Their ships can't navigate these narrow passages, which means they'll need to send boarding parties." Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. "The tunnels are a maze. Even with their advanced technology, they'll be fighting on our terms in there." "Exactly. We know every inch of this place, every maintenance shaft, every emergency exit, every structural weak point. We can make them pay for every meter they advance." Chen began issuing orders with crisp efficiency. Mining equipment would be converted into improvised weapons and fortifications. Excavation charges originally meant for asteroid breaking would become devastating booby traps. The facility's atmospheric controls could be manipulated to create choking clouds of dust and debris in key corridors. "What about the civilians?" asked Medical Officer Thompson, her voice heavy with concern for the non-combatants scattered throughout the facility. "Emergency shelters in the deepest levels," Chen replied. "Sealed blast doors and independent life support systems. If the Zephyrians break through our defenses, at least some people might survive long enough for rescue." The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Miners who had spent their careers wielding plasma cutters and seismic hammers now learned to use them as weapons of war. Engineers rigged explosive devices with the same precision they had once applied to controlled demolitions. Even the facility's maintenance robots were reprogrammed to serve as mobile barriers and reconnaissance units. Chen found herself thinking about Earth, wondering if the planet that had sent them to this distant asteroid knew of their plight. The human homeworld seemed impossibly far away, separated by weeks of hyperspace travel even for the fastest military vessels. Would help arrive in time? Or would Haven's Rest become another forgotten tragedy in the Zephyrians' campaign of conquest? The first boarding pods struck the facility's outer hull like metallic meteors, their impact tremors reverberating through the asteroid's structure. Emergency klaxons wailed as atmospheric breach alerts flooded the communication system. Through the security cameras, Chen watched armored Zephyrian soldiers pouring into the facility's loading bays, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. "They're coming," Morrison reported unnecessarily, his voice tight with nervous energy. Chen activated the facility-wide intercom, her words echoing through every corridor and chamber of Haven's Rest. "All personnel, this is Commander Chen. The enemy has breached our perimeter. Execute Defensive Plan Alpha. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for humanity's right to exist among the stars. Make them remember why humans don't surrender easily." The Zephyrian assault began with overwhelming force, as their soldiers advanced through the facility's main arteries with ruthless efficiency. Their weapons discharged bolts of superheated plasma that could punch through steel bulkheads, while their armor seemed to absorb the desperate return fire from the human defenders. But the aliens had underestimated both human ingenuity and the treacherous nature of the mining facility itself. The first Zephyrian squad to enter the main processing chamber triggered a carefully placed explosive device that brought down several tons of refined ore, crushing them beneath the avalanche of metal and rock. In the narrow maintenance tunnels, human defenders used their knowledge of the facility's layout to devastating effect. They struck from hidden positions, then melted away through passages too small for the bulky Zephyrian armor. Improvised weapons created from mining equipment proved surprisingly effective against alien technology designed for conventional warfare. Chen coordinated the defense from a mobile command post, using the facility's internal communication network to track enemy movements and direct her forces accordingly. Each small victory came at a terrible price, as human casualties mounted steadily despite their tactical advantages. "Commander, they're adapting faster than we expected," Rodriguez reported through his helmet radio, the sound of weapons fire crackling in the background. "Their second wave is using different tactics. They're mapping our tunnel system and cutting off our retreat routes." The realization struck Chen like a physical blow. The Zephyrians weren't just trying to capture the facility quickly. They were systematically eliminating every possible hiding place, every potential ambush site, every route of escape. Their initial losses had been acceptable sacrifices in exchange for tactical intelligence. "How long before they reach the civilian shelters?" Chen asked, dreading the answer. "At their current rate of advance, maybe 6 hours. Less if they bring in heavy assault units." Chen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of command pressing down upon her like the crushing depths of space itself. 200 human lives hung in the balance, and Earth's response still seemed impossibly distant. They needed a miracle, or at least enough time for one to arrive. The battle for Haven's Rest had only just begun, but already the outcome seemed written in the stars themselves. The Zephyrians possessed superior numbers, advanced technology, and the tactical initiative. All humanity had was stubborn determination and the desperate hope that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, help was racing toward their distant cry for survival. The facility's lights flickered as another explosion rocked the asteroid's structure, reminding Chen that time was running out for everyone aboard Haven's Rest. In the distance, she could hear the steady advance of Zephyrian forces, methodically clearing each section of the mining complex with mechanical precision. But humans had never been known for accepting defeat gracefully, and Commander Chen had no intention of becoming the first to break that tradition. If the Zephyrians wanted Haven's Rest, they would have to pay for it with their own blood, one tunnel at a time. The acrid smell of burnt metal and vaporized rock filled the air as Commander Chen ducked behind a makeshift barricade constructed from overturned mining carts. The Zephyrian assault had intensified beyond anything she could have imagined, with their forces adapting to human guerrilla tactics with terrifying efficiency. "Status report," Chen called into her communication headset, wincing as another plasma bolt scorched the wall mere inches from her position. "We've lost sections C through F," came Rodriguez's strained voice over the static-filled channel. "They brought in some kind of mechanical units that can navigate the narrow passages. We can't stop them with conventional tactics anymore." Chen cursed under her breath as she processed this devastating news. The Zephyrians had deployed spider-like robotic drones, each one roughly the size of a human torso but capable of moving through spaces that would challenge even the most agile person. These machines served as scouts and assault units, mapping the facility's defensive positions and eliminating human fighters with ruthless precision. Lieutenant Morrison appeared at her side, his uniform torn and blackened with soot. "Commander, we need to talk. The situation down in the lower levels is getting desperate." They retreated deeper into the facility's maintenance section, where the constant rumble of ventilation systems provided some cover for their conversation. Morrison's face reflected the grim reality that Chen already suspected, but hoped to avoid confronting. "How bad is it?" she asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "We started with 47 combat-capable personnel. We're down to 19 effective fighters, with 8 more wounded but still mobile. The Zephyrians haven't even deployed their main assault force yet. They're just using their advanced scouts to wear us down." The mathematical reality hit Chen like a physical blow. At this rate of attrition, they would be completely overrun within hours rather than days. The human defenders were fighting bravely, but courage alone couldn't overcome such overwhelming odds indefinitely. "What about the civilian shelters?" Chen asked, dreading the response. "Still secure for now, but the Zephyrians are systematically working their way through each level. They seem to be in no hurry, which suggests they're confident about the outcome. They're treating this like a training exercise rather than a real battle." Chen felt a surge of anger at the aliens' casual approach to human extermination. To the Zephyrians, the conquest of Haven's Rest was apparently nothing more than a minor inconvenience, a brief delay in their larger plans of galactic domination. The facility's public address system crackled to life, carrying the cold voice of the Zephyrian commander they had heard hours earlier. "Human defenders, your resistance has been noted and found inadequate. You have demonstrated neither tactical competence nor technological superiority. Surrender now, and we will limit our experimentation on your species to essential scientific research." "Experimentation?" Morrison whispered, his face going pale. Chen had heard the rumors about what happened to species that fell under Zephyrian control. The aliens didn't simply eliminate their enemies. They studied them, dissected them, learned everything possible about their biology and psychology before ultimately deciding whether they deserved extinction or slavery. "We're not giving them that satisfaction," Chen said firmly. Though she felt the weight of their hopeless situation pressing down upon her shoulders like the crushing depths of space itself. She activated her own communication device and broadcast on all frequencies, knowing the Zephyrians would monitor their transmission. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Authority. We reject your demands for surrender. Haven's Rest will remain under human control, and every step you take will cost you dearly." The alien response came almost immediately, tinged with what might have been amusement. "Your species' capacity for self-deception continues to fascinate our research teams. Very well, we shall proceed with the systematic elimination of your defensive positions. Your suffering will provide valuable data about human pain tolerance." The communication cut out, leaving Chen and Morrison in the facility's emergency lighting, surrounded by the distant sounds of ongoing combat. The red glow cast everything in hellish shadows, making the mining facility feel more like a tomb than a place where humans had once worked and lived. "Commander," came Engineer Rodriguez's voice over the communication system, urgent with desperation. "They've breached the main power coupling. If they cut our primary energy source, we'll lose life support in the civilian areas." Chen felt her heart sink even further. Without life support, the sealed civilian shelters would become death traps rather than safe havens. The Zephyrians were demonstrating their tactical superiority by threatening the very people the human defenders were trying to protect. "Can we reroute power through the secondary systems?" Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Maybe for a few hours, but they'll figure out our workarounds eventually. These aren't random raiders, Commander. They know exactly what they're doing. It's like they've studied our technology and found every possible weakness." The realization struck Chen with horrible clarity. The Zephyrians hadn't simply stumbled upon Haven's Rest during a random patrol. They had planned this assault with meticulous attention to detail, studying human engineering and tactical doctrine until they could predict every possible defensive strategy. "They've been watching us," Chen said aloud, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. "Probably for months, maybe years. This isn't an invasion, it's a field test." Morrison's expression reflected the same sick understanding. "They're using us as experimental subjects to test their theories about human military capabilities." A new series of explosions rocked the facility, much closer than before. Through the internal monitoring system, Chen could see Zephyrian heavy assault units moving through the main corridors like armored nightmares. These soldiers were larger than their scouts, equipped with weapons that could punch through the facility's reinforced bulkheads as if they were made of paper. "All units, fall back to defensive positions echo through hotel," Chen commanded, though she knew they were simply delaying the inevitable. "Implement scorched earth protocols on all abandoned sections." The humans began systematically destroying everything they couldn't defend, denying the Zephyrians any useful intelligence about human technology and industrial capabilities. Mining equipment disappeared in controlled explosions. Computer databases were wiped clean, and entire sections of the facility were sealed off with improvised demolition charges. But even these desperate measures couldn't hide the fact that the battle was turning against them with mathematical certainty. The Zephyrians advanced steadily through each level, their mechanical scouts mapping every passage while their heavy units eliminated resistance with overwhelming firepower. Chen found herself thinking about Earth, wondering if anyone on the human homeworld would ever learn about the fate of Haven's Rest. Would their sacrifice mean anything? Or would humanity's first major encounter with the Zephyrian Empire end in anonymous extinction? "Commander, we're getting something strange on the long-range sensors," reported Morrison, his voice carrying a note of confused hope. "It's faint, but there seems to be some kind of disturbance in hyperspace nearby." Chen felt a flicker of desperate optimism. "Could it be a relief force from Earth?" Unknown. The Zephyrian jamming is too strong to get detailed readings, but something's definitely coming our way. The battle continued to rage through the facility's corridors as human defenders fought desperately for every meter of ground. Chen coordinated their retreating forces, trying to extract maximum casualties from the advancing aliens while protecting their dwindling supply of ammunition and explosives. In the medical bay, Dr. A.E. Thompson worked frantically to treat wounded defenders while preparing for the possibility that the civilian shelters might be compromised. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, but Chen could see the strain in her eyes as the reality of their situation became increasingly apparent. "How are our people holding up?" Chen asked during a brief lull in the fighting. "Physically, they're pushed beyond normal human limits, but mentally?" Thompson shook her head grimly. "They know what's at stake. Every person in this facility understands that surrender means something worse than death. They'll keep fighting until they can't lift their weapons anymore." The conversation was interrupted by a tremendous explosion that seemed to shake the entire asteroid. Emergency lights flickered throughout the facility as structural damage alarms began wailing with mechanical urgency. "What the hell was that?" Chen demanded, racing toward the nearest monitoring station. Morrison's voice crackled over the communication system, filled with a mixture of terror and awe. "Commander, you need to see this. The Zephyrians just brought in something massive. It's some kind of siege engine, big enough to crack this asteroid like an egg." Through the external cameras, Chen could see the monstrous machine that the aliens had deployed. It resembled a mechanical spider crossed with a drill press, its multiple arms ending in devices that glowed with ominous energy. The siege engine was slowly positioning itself against the asteroid's surface, preparing to cut through kilometers of rock to reach the facility's core. "Time to breach?" Chen asked, though she dreaded the answer. "At their current rate of cutting, maybe 3 hours until they reach the civilian shelters. Less if they decide to just crack the whole asteroid open." Chen felt the last vestiges of hope draining from her heart. Even if help was coming from Earth, it couldn't possibly arrive in time to prevent the Zephyrians from completing their methodical destruction of Haven's Rest and everyone aboard. The alien voice returned to the facility's communication system, carrying the same cold amusement as before. "Human defenders, observe the futility of your resistance. Your asteroid fortress will be opened like a flower, and your people will be harvested like fruit. Your species' tendency toward hopeless defiance has been thoroughly documented." Chen stared at the tactical display showing their impossible situation, watching as Zephyrian forces closed in from multiple directions while their siege engine prepared to crack open the asteroid like a nutshell. Everything they had fought for, everything they had sacrificed, seemed destined to end in failure and extinction. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice refused to accept defeat. Humans had faced impossible odds before and somehow found ways to survive. Perhaps this time would be no different if they could just hold out long enough for whatever was disturbing hyperspace nearby to arrive at their position. The hyperspace disturbance erupted into reality with the fury of a dying star. As dozens of human warships materialized around the Zephyrian blockade with perfect tactical precision, Commander Chen watched through the facility's external cameras as sleek Earth naval vessels appeared at calculated positions, their weapons already powered and targeting systems locked onto alien ships. But these weren't ordinary Navy vessels. The lead ship bore markings that Chen recognized from classified briefings. Earth's 1st Shock Division, humanity's most elite military unit. These were the soldiers who had earned their reputation fighting pirates in the Outer Rim, corporate militias in the asteroid belt, and worse things that most civilians never heard about. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Rebecca Santos of the Earth Naval Forces," came a voice over the communication channels, cutting through the alien jamming like a blade through silk. "You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawing from human territory before we demonstrate why attacking our people is considered a fatal mistake." The Zephyrian response was swift and predictable. Their fleet began maneuvering into combat formation, apparently confident that their superior numbers would carry the day against these newcomers. 43 alien warships against what appeared to be only 20 human vessels seemed like favorable odds from their perspective. They were about to learn why that assumption would prove catastrophically incorrect. The first salvo from the human fleet shattered 3 Zephyrian destroyers before their shields could even fully activate. The aliens had expected conventional weapons and defensive strategies, but Earth's military had spent decades developing technologies specifically designed to counter advanced alien threats. Chen watched in amazement as the human ships moved with coordination that seemed almost telepathic. They had trained together for years, developing tactics that took advantage of uniquely human psychological traits: unpredictability, adaptability, and an absolute refusal to follow conventional military doctrine when unconventional approaches might prove more effective. "Look at that," Morrison whispered, his voice filled with awe as he observed the space battle unfolding around them. "They're not fighting like any military manual ever written." The human ships employed what military strategists called controlled chaos, a tactical philosophy that deliberately introduced random elements into their attack patterns. While alien computers struggled to predict their movements, human pilots relied on intuition and split-second improvisation to outmaneuver opponents with technically superior vessels. Admiral Santos's voice cut through the combat chatter with crisp authority. "Shock Division Alpha, begin planetary assault. I want that siege engine neutralized and our people extracted. Show these lizards why humans don't stay trapped for long." The first wave of assault shuttles launched from the human fleet like angry hornets, their hulls bristling with weapons designed for close-quarters combat. These weren't standard military transports, but specialized landing craft built specifically for extracting personnel from hostile situations. Chen felt a surge of hope as she watched the shuttles dive toward Haven's Rest, weaving between Zephyrian defensive fire with reckless courage that would have been suicide for any other species. But humans had always possessed an unusual relationship with acceptable risk, especially when their own people were in danger. The lead shuttle touched down near the facility's main entrance with a precision that spoke of extensive combat experience. Its assault ramp dropped to reveal figures in advanced combat armor that looked more like mechanical exoskeletons than traditional military gear. These were Earth's shock troopers, and they moved with lethal efficiency that made the Zephyrian soldiers look slow and clumsy by comparison. Their weapons discharged rounds that seemed to ignore alien armor entirely, while their tactical coordination resembled a deadly dance choreographed by masters of violence. "Haven's Rest Command, this is Colonel Marcus Webb of the 1st Shock Division," came a voice over Chen's communication system. "We're here to extract your people and teach these aliens some manners. Can you provide tactical intelligence on enemy positions?" Chen's hands shook with relief as she activated her transmitter. "Colonel Webb, this is Commander Chen. We have civilian personnel in the lower levels and approximately 20 wounded in the medical bay. The Zephyrians have deployed heavy assault units throughout the facility." "Copy that, Commander. My people eat heavy assault units for breakfast. Stand by for immediate extraction procedures." The shock troopers advanced through the facility like an unstoppable force of nature, their combat techniques displaying the culmination of human military evolution. They didn't simply overwhelm their enemies with superior firepower. They outthought them, outmaneuvered them, and demonstrated tactical creativity that no alien computer could predict or counter. Chen watched through internal security cameras as the human soldiers encountered their first group of Zephyrian heavy assault units. Instead of engaging in direct combat, the shock troopers used the facility's own mining equipment against their enemies, turning industrial machinery into improvised weapons with deadly effectiveness. "Remind me never to get on the wrong side of those people," Morrison muttered as he observed one shock trooper using a plasma cutter to slice through alien armor like it was made of paper. The Zephyrian siege engine, which had seemed so threatening just minutes before, became the target of a coordinated assault that demonstrated human engineering creativity at its finest. The shock troopers didn't simply attack the massive machine, they analyzed its structural weaknesses and systematically dismantled it using techniques that turned the aliens' own technology against them. Colonel Webb's voice crackled over the communication system with updates that sounded almost casual despite the intensity of the fighting around him. Commander Chen, we've secured the medical bay and are beginning evacuation procedures. My engineers are setting up a defensive perimeter while we extract your wounded personnel. The human military approach differed fundamentally from what the Zephyrians expected. Instead of trying to hold territory or engage in prolonged battles, the shock troopers focused on achieving specific objectives with maximum efficiency and minimum risk to civilian personnel. Chen found herself marveling at the tactical sophistication displayed by these soldiers. They had clearly studied the facility's layout during their approach, developing extraction plans that took advantage of every possible route and defensive position. Their preparation was thorough, but their execution remained flexible enough to adapt to changing circumstances. All civilian personnel, this is Colonel Webb, came the announcement over the facility's public address system. We're evacuating everyone to secure landing zones. Follow the directions of any shock trooper you encounter, and remember that we're here to get you home safely. The extraction proceeded with mechanical precision. As human soldiers established secure corridors through the facility, while their comrades maintained defensive positions against Zephyrian counterattacks. The aliens had expected to face desperate resistance from trapped humans, not a coordinated rescue operation executed by Earth's finest military units. In space, the naval battle continued to rage with increasing intensity. The Zephyrian fleet had initially possessed numerical superiority, but human tactical innovation was rapidly equalizing the odds. Earth's warships employed strategies that seemed to violate conventional military doctrine, using apparent retreats to lure alien vessels into carefully prepared ambushes. Admiral Santos maintained constant communication with the ground forces, coordinating between the space battle and the extraction operation with the skill of someone who had spent decades perfecting the art of military multitasking. Shock Division Alpha, be advised that we've eliminated their command vessel. Enemy coordination is degrading rapidly, Santos reported, her voice carrying satisfaction at a job well executed. Chen felt a surge of pride as she watched human military competence in action. These weren't just soldiers. They were representatives of everything humanity had learned about warfare, survival, and protecting their own people. The Zephyrians had expected to encounter primitive resistance from a species they considered inferior, but instead they faced opponents who had turned military science into an art form. The final phase of the extraction began as shock troopers reached the deepest civilian shelters. Chen accompanied Colonel Webb's team, watching as they efficiently organized the evacuation of 200 terrified but grateful humans who had spent hours believing they were about to die. "How did you know we were in trouble?" Chen asked Webb as they moved through the facility's corridors toward the landing zones. "Fleet Command noticed your missed check-in about 6 hours ago," Webb replied, his attention split between their conversation and monitoring tactical communications. "Admiral Santos had us en route within 2 hours. We've been tracking Zephyrian movements in this sector for months, waiting for them to make a mistake like this." "A mistake?" Chen asked, confused. Webb's grin was visible through his helmet's transparent faceplate. "They attacked human civilians. That's always a mistake when dealing with Earth's military. We don't just rescue our people, we make sure the attackers remember why that was a bad idea." The shuttle ride back to the fleet provided Chen with a perfect view of the battle's conclusion. The Zephyrian fleet, which had seemed so invincible just hours before, was now in full retreat. Those alien ships that could still maneuver were fleeing toward hyperspace, leaving behind the wreckage of vessels that had underestimated human military capabilities. "Admiral Santos to all units," came the announcement over the fleet communication system. "Mission accomplished. All personnel extracted successfully, with minimal friendly casualties. The Zephyrian threat to this sector has been neutralized. But Webb's expression suggested that the mission was far from over in his mind. "Colonel, what happens now?" Chen asked. "Now, we make sure they understand the consequences of attacking humans," Webb replied grimly. "The Admiral has orders to pursue the retreating ships and deliver a message that the Zephyrian Empire won't forget anytime soon." Chen realized that what had begun as a desperate defense of a mining facility was about to become something much larger. Earth's military had arrived not just to rescue the trapped personnel, but to demonstrate that humanity wouldn't tolerate threats to its citizens anywhere in the galaxy. The human fleet began maneuvering for pursuit, their ships moving with the same deadly coordination they had displayed throughout the battle. The Zephyrians had expected to conduct a simple military exercise against inferior opponents, but instead, they had awakened something they were unprepared to face. "You know what the real difference is between us and them?" Webb asked Chen as they watched the pursuit begin. "What's that, Colonel?" "They fight for conquest and expansion. We fight for each other. That makes all the difference when things get serious." As the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace in pursuit of their enemies, Chen understood that the battle for Haven's Rest had become something more significant than anyone had originally imagined. It was a declaration that humanity had claimed its place among the stars, and that anyone who threatened human lives would face consequences they couldn't possibly anticipate. The Zephyrian Empire had learned a harsh lesson about the species they had dismissed as primitive and weak. But Chen suspected this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that would test everything humanity had learned about warfare, survival, and protecting their own in the vast darkness of space. Earth's shock troops had struck, and the galaxy would never be the same.